The Mandalorian, Season 2 Finale, The Rescue. I mean, what else were they gonna call it? Spoilers. This episode, like all the others, began with a very specifically tailored recap that I can now securely say is worth watching every week. The significance of the Darksaber, the Dark Troopers, Grogu reaching out into the void in search of another Jedi. It might seem obvious, but the option to skip this intro is there every week, so I'm just saying if you didn't understand what happened, you should definitely consider watching them and not skipping anything. Hopefully this video can give some clarity to those with misunderstandings and an opinion from me for those that want it. We opened into a chase sequence between Slave 1 and an Imperial shuttle. On board was previously seen Dr. Pershing and two pilots. I was rather pleased that the episode opened with such intensity that Pershing's attempts at claiming authority were completely splattered by this pilot. Then we saw this tremendous wide shot of Slave 1 slowly and ominously rising above the windscreen even though there's no wind in space. We were reminded of the dominance this assembled gang can muster over the Empire, giving the audience confidence in our hero's success. When they boarded, however, it quickly became clear that very certainty of victory wasn't entirely assured, with one pilot killing the other in a similar vein as the officer in Episode 3. The radical behavior of Gideon's underlings enabled them to undermine the confidence of our character Cara Dune and by extension the audience. The brainwashing was so absolute that the pilot suggested the rebellion were terrorists. This put a spin on the narrative once more. Like I mentioned in my Season 1 review, this rather new stance of characters justifying the Empire's existence is so thrilling to me, though I was reminded that this stance isn't entirely new.
All those innocent contractors brought in to do the job were killed. Casualties of a war they had nothing to do with.
Do you know how many millions were killed on those bases?
Along come these left-wing militants and blast everything within a 3-mile radius with their lasers. You didn't ask for that. You have no personal politics. You're just trying to scrape out a living.
Destroying your planet was a small price to pay to rid the galaxy of terrorism.
One other neat little detail they added from the events of this opening scene appeared when Dr. Pershing was sat on board Slave 1. His ear was damaged from the laser blast. This pinpoint accuracy from a hostage rescuer is normally shown to have no side effects at all, so to see him like this and hearing his screams of deafening pain were very much appreciated. Our characters then flew to Mars to find Bo-Katan and her buddy Koska. I was honestly not expecting them to return this soon, but my god, it was worthwhile. I swear every insult and taunt written in the script was made to please. I found these Mandalorians sizing each other up and having a little scrap to be unexpected and satisfying. It would appear as though the power these suits can wield can make their wearers fight each other as well as defeat evil. A with great power comes great responsibility idea. Bo-Katan stopping the fight made sense in the narrative given that she has the most responsibility in this group. The gang then started their attack run, but under the disguise of a shuttle under fire. The moment the TIE fighters were ordered for launch, we got a fantastic close-up on the first ship to launch. This illustrated the unexpected weight of this attack before seeing it being loaded onto a launch bay. The POV shots gave it a feeling like that of being on a roller coaster that launches instead of descends. Stealth from Thorpe Park springs to mind, but you can imagine the potential for a fighter having a head-on collision with this shuttle.
I'll try spinning, that's a good trick.
It's a bloody good job Boba zoomed off when he did, given who he might have bumped into otherwise. This screeching sound the shuttle made as it awkwardly landed in the bay made me wince harder than Bo-Katan did, like hearing fingernails on a chalkboard. With the gang indiscriminately killing troopers and officers alike, Moff activated the Dark Troopers. I think you know what I'm gonna say here, but the initial teasing dubstep music really rubbed me up the wrong way. I can certainly understand its purpose. It fits in with this idea that they're badass robots that we've been anxiously awaiting to see fight. Thankfully, when the troopers returned from space, the score's orchestral moments took priority, adding to the experience instead of removing from it. I did like that the troopers were frozen for preservation, though. It made me think that Mando's flamethrower might finally do some damage, but obviously that turned out to be a false hope. Meanwhile, the first all-female Star Wars Wars supergroup started to kick some ass. I particularly liked the bit when the Mandalorians jumped off the edge and moments afterwards Pincer attacked the boys who thought they'd sprung a trap. It was nice that there was some surprise to our gang's attacks as opposed to depending on typical Imperial inaccuracy, but there was one tiny skank in the scud pie. I felt that Kara's gun jamming didn't really go anywhere aside from presenting her not needing no help from nobody. It's better than no hitches at all, but I didn't think this jamming was executed very well. The gun jams when she's not in cover and has 3 troopers coming towards her. I get that the Imperial formation here was terrible too, and it didn't throw me off as much as when the machine gun missed Fennec in episode 6. Had she been wounded or held the group back in some way as a result of the gun jamming, I might have felt more watching this sequence than, that was cool. Mando then snuck around whilst the troopers were distracted. I liked that Mando's worst nightmare became a reality when he came face to face with a droid that completely overwhelmed him. Though Mando's armor saved him, these troopers really proved their worth, as not a single one of Mando's tricks were able to stop it except his newfound Beskar spear. Mando then ejected the rest of the bunch out of an airlock. I can say that I wasn't fooled at all by this seemingly easy victory, knowing that they wouldn't need to breathe and can also fly in space. He then found the cell with the child alongside our Lord and Savior Gideon, wielding that sweet dark saber. Jesus, this scene was so brilliant.
Assume that I know everything.
To have an antagonist that knows everything is truly a worthy one. The way he tried to manipulate Mando by suggesting that the boarding party were murderous savages, this was indeed a rather accurate assessment. All these people died at their hands, all for the sake of a sword. In a world like Star Wars, the good and bad factions have been plain as day established from the beginning, presenting this idea that not just the Empire is capable of doing bad things made for some really great drama. Having said that, Mando has witnessed Gideon killing his own men before, so I'm not surprised he wasn't completely swayed by these sweet nothings. It was the moment Mando declared his loyalty towards the child and not Bo-Katan that swayed the tide of events for the rest of the episode. I think Gideon knew this would be the choice Mando would make anyway, so him turning around and trying to kill Mando would work in his favor, win or lose. Had he won the duel, he'd be secure in the knowledge that he could keep the child and deal with the Mandalorian leadership issue later. If he were to lose, the Darksaber wouldn't be in the hands of Bo-Katan. Even if Gideon was being a little disingenuous about bringing order back to the galaxy, it was still a noble cause to be fighting for. It's part of what makes him human and believable as a character, and I love that. At exactly halfway through the episode, Mando and Gideon dueled spectacularly. The sound of the blade itself had this almost electrical feel to it. It was very interesting that the Darksaber had the potential to melt Beskar, as we saw the spear glow the longer it came into contact with it. There's evidently some special qualities to this sword that outmatch a lightsaber. After all, the Darksaber was made to counter the Jedi. It ended with Mando beating Gideon, but perhaps the only thing Gideon didn't know would happen was that he'd live to witness the outcome of Mando's victory, which he relished. Suddenly, with the Darksaber's ownership in question, Bo-Katan was left powerless. Even if Mando had killed Gideon, it would have been interesting to see how Koska might have reacted had Bo merely accepted Mando yielding to her so nonchalantly. This entire season has been questioning what it means to be Mandalorian, and yet even Din didn't know the deepest, darkest, secret about what defines the Mandalorian leadership. If the third season doesn't pick up right here after the doors closed and Luke departed, I will be very disappointed. I only say this because obviously Fennec was with Boba in the epilogue, an event that clearly took place after this debate would be sorted. Before anything could be settled though, the Dark Troopers were back to put Clone Wars droids to shame. Every footstep they made was mechanically menacing with their weight produced by the sound design. Even their punches on the cockpit door were just as ominous as their footsteps. Their mechanical realism was what made them a force to be reckoned with. And then our Deus Ex Machina flew onto the screen. The setup from the tragedy episode had paid off in this final act. Grogu's ears lifting sent shivers down my spine. I initially thought this would be Ahsoka, but when I saw just one lonely lightsaber, that option was entirely cast out. It did seem a little strange to me that the Dark Troopers just stopped their punching, with them turning all their efforts to the hangar. Their reaction gave me the impression that perhaps a Sith had come aboard, seeing them all standing to attention. It's not like we could see the color of the lightsaber initially either. Only when the word Jedi was mentioned, accompanied by Gideon's look of fear, did it click with me who this was. Because of the age gap between Mark Hamill and Luke in the story, I was honestly expecting him to kill the droids and then bugger off without showing his face. Nope. They truly went all the way. We saw such an excess of droid slicing in the prequel trilogy, yet here it felt like the idea pays off after all the pressure and build-up we got from these droids throughout this series. This was the kind of ass-kicking I was expecting from Luke in the sequel trilogy that we never truly got. I thought it was a shame that there was no recognition from Cara though. This is one of the people who helped bring down the Empire, and you're not fangirling as hard as I am right now? I have no idea if this was Mark doubling for himself or somebody younger, but because the actor is still alive, they could probably make a more accurate job of him. His face is slightly uncanny though, and I'm sure it's going to look a lot worse 10 years down the line, but the balls these writers have to reintroduce him for the most glorious 10 minutes of this show, kudos to them. There's so much authenticity and respect paid to the design of him. The lightsaber's look and sound, the black glove covering the prosthetic hand, the score, the costume. Mando had to finally say farewell to Grogu here, and I just melted in a puddle of tears. I am exaggerating, I didn't actually cry, but I would believe you if you told me you did. The detail in the design of this puppet came out in this gorgeous close-up here. Even seeing Pascal's face change indecisively from whether he should smile for the child returning to the order he belongs to or to look gloomy at the prospect of being alone was fantastic. Thankfully, the semi-final shot of the episode provided hope for our main character, as it showed he's got plenty to fill his boots with now that the child's arc has been completed. The score triumphantly relayed the emotions for the remainder of the scene, leaving one door closed but so many remaining open. The New Republic slowly losing its footing in the galaxy. Boba Fett claiming the throne of Jabba's palace to create an entire series worth of stories. The reclamation of Mandalore and the big question mark about the Darksaber. The trajectory is so huge and I cannot wait to see more. Best of all though, Mando won't need to worry about getting a babysitter for any of this. And that just about wraps up my thoughts on this series. Thanks for watching. The opinion on this episode is pretty unanimous, so I'll ask this question instead. Would you like to see me cover more Star Wars content on this channel? Be it the old movies or the new upcoming Bad Batch show, whatever you like. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below or join us for a chinwag on my Discord server, where we'll continue this discussion.